Imagine this. It is 2 a.m., a quiet village, Nyanza. You are dead asleep, dreaming peacefully. And then you're jolted awake by the most chaotic, deafening, metallic clanging you have ever heard in your life. It isn't an alarm, it isn't a celebration, and it is definitely not thunder. You drag yourself to the window, and the entire neighborhood is outside, in the pitch black, beating pots, pans, sufurias, like their lives depend on it. Because, bestie, they do. Your grandmother bursts into your room, eyes wide open, a look you have never seen on her face before. She screams at you, grab a metal spoon, and start hitting that door frame now. Pause. Because the Nyawawa are walking. A long pause. Let the silence work. These are the invisible spirits of the restless dead, and tonight, they are migrating right through your front yard. Stop the noise for even 1 second, and they might decide to stay. And listen, if you press your ear to that wind coming off Lake Victoria, you can actually hear them. Hundreds of voices, weeping, whispering, calling out into the dark. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Grab your tea, grab your snacks, get comfortable, because today we are heading to the shores of Namlolwe to uncover the most chilling Luo legend I have ever come across. If you are ready for some real African horror, let's get into it. Now, besties, before we get into the terror, we need to talk about the water. For the Luo people, Namlolwe, the great Lake Victoria, is not just a beautiful body of water. It is not just somewhere you go to fish or watch the sunset. It is a living, breathing, and sometimes very angry spiritual entity. It is believed that the lake is a massive gateway, a literal bridge between our physical world and the realm of the ancestors. But here's the thing, guys. Not every spirit that goes into that water finds peace. The Nyawawa are not your friendly neighborhood ancestors who come to bless you in your dreams. No, these are the restless ones. We are talking about spirits of people who perished in the deep, dark depths of that lake. Fishermen whose boats capsized in sudden storms, travelers claimed by the waves, never given a proper burial on dry land. And there's a darker history here. Elders say these spirits are also linked to victims of ancient, terrifying epidemics, smallpox. When someone died of plague back then, they were buried in haste, or not buried at all. And a spirit that leaves the body in that much pain does not rest easily. So, when the sun finally dips below the horizon and the water turns that deep, ink-black color, the kind that looks like it could swallow the sky whole, that is when the veil drops. These spirits rise from the floor of the lake in massive, invisible crowds, and they don't stay in the water. They migrate, moving from the hills in a chaotic procession back toward the lake. You cannot see them with your human eyes, but I promise you, you will feel them. The air around you turns ice cold, even on a warm Kenyan night. Your skin crawls as the wind begins to whistle. And it isn't just wind. It sounds like 1,000 voices, weeping, dragging their feet through dry grass. The dogs in the village start howling, not barking, howling like they are mourning something. And that is when you know the lake is exhaling all its secrets, its sorrows, and its dead onto the land. It is a moment where nature itself holds its breath because the kings and queens of the water are passing through. Okay, guys, get comfortable. Maybe grab another snack because this is the heart of the story. There is an old tale passed down by Luo elders about a fisherman named Oching. Now, Oching wasn't just any fisherman. He was known for being brave, maybe a little too brave. He lived right on the ragged edge of Namloe in a small hut where the water practically lapped at his doorstep every morning. One evening, the sun was setting, painting the lake in these deep, bruised shades of purple and gold. The water was unusually still, like a mirror. Oching was pulling his nets in when he looked up and saw her. Standing right there on the marshy shore was a woman. And when I tell you she was beautiful, I mean the kind of beautiful that makes you forget your own name. Her skin was smooth like riverstone, glowing under the twilight, long, graceful limbs. But she was just standing there. No bucket for water, no fishing gear, just staring out at the horizon. Oching, bold man that he was, approached her. She didn't pull away. She looked at him with these deep, dark eyes, the kind that feel like looking into the bottom of a well. She barely spoke, but Oching, he was already gone, completely under her spell. He invited her back to his home, and to his surprise, she followed. They got married shortly after, and for a few months, Oching felt like the luckiest man in the village. But besties, in these folklore stories, there is always a catch we choose to ignore because we're in love, right? The first red flag? She never ate. Oching would bring home the freshest tilapia, the finest maize. She would just push the plate away with a faint, sad smile. The second red flag was even creepier. Every night around 3 a.m., Oching would wake up and the bed would be cold. He would find her sitting perfectly still by the window, eyes wide open, staring toward the lake. Not sleeping, listening, like she was waiting for a call only she could hear. Neighbors started to whisper, "Oching, where did she come from? Why does she smell like damp earth and lilies even when she hasn't been to the well?" But Oching didn't care. He loved her. Until the night the atmosphere in the village completely shifted. It was a Tuesday night, one of those heavy, breathless nights where the air feels like wet wool. Even the crickets, which usually scream in the grass, went dead silent. The dogs didn't bark. They whimpered and crawled under the granaries. Oching woke up to a sound he couldn't describe. It started as a low hum, like a swarm of bees in the distance. But as it got closer, it turned into a chaotic, rhythmic thumping. Thump. 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 He looked over at his wife, and his heart dropped. She wasn't beautiful anymore. She was pale, almost translucent, and she was shaking so violently the bangles on her wrists were rattling. She gripped Ochieng's arm. Her skin felt like ice. And she whispered, "Ochieng, they're here. My family has come for the taxes I owe the water." Outside, the sound exploded. It wasn't just wind. It was the sound of 1,000 invisible feet marching through the dust. the sound of weeping, high-pitched whistling, and that terrifying metallic clanging of spirits who have no peace. The Nyawawa had arrived, and they weren't just passing through. They were circling the hut, scratching at the thatch of the roof, whispering her name in a language that sounded like water rushing over stones. "Don't let them in," she pleaded. Ochieng grabbed his spear, his heavy wooden stool, tried to barricade the door. But how do you fight something you cannot see? The wind inside the hut began to swirl in a mini-cyclone, knocking over his cooking pots, blowing out the lamp. And in the darkness, he heard a sound, like a heavy net, being dragged across the floor. He reached out for his wife, shouting her name into the void. He felt her hand for a split second, cold and wet, like a fish slipping through his fingers. And then, silence. Total. Ringing. Silence. The wind stopped. The whistling vanished. The thumping disappeared. Into the distance. Toward the lake. When Ochieng finally managed to light a small candle, the hut was a wreck. But the most chilling part? His wife was gone. No sign of a struggle. No broken door. The only thing left, in the middle of the room, was a single trail of wet, muddy sand and a few lake weeds, leading from the bed, straight out the door, and down to the water's edge. She had been reclaimed. The Nyawawa don't take no for an answer. They don't care about your marriage certificates or your love stories. They come for what belongs to the lake. Ochieng spent the rest of his life sitting on that shore, calling out her name. The villagers say that on some nights, when the Nyawawa migrate, you can hear a woman's voice whistling back to him. But he never saw her again. This story is the reason why, to this day, when the wind changes and that cold chill hits the village, the elders tell the young men, "Be careful who you find by the water at twilight." Not everything that looks like a woman is human. Okay, so we've heard the legend, but let's get into the actual tea, the how-to of surviving a night when the spirits decide to take a stroll through your backyard. Because besties, this isn't just a story from the 1800s. People in Nyanza are still out here living this. When the Nyawawa are on the move, it's not just one or two ghosts. It's a massive, invisible migration. And the only way to protect your home is through a ritual called Goyo Nyawawa, which literally translates to beating the Nyawawa. Now you might be thinking, why can't I just lock my door and hide under the duvet? Well, apparently, if you stay silent, the spirits think the house is empty, or that you're inviting them to come in and rest. And trust me, you do not want a restless water spirit resting on your sofa. So the second that first chilling whistle echoes through the trees, the signal goes out. It's like a community alarm system. Suddenly the entire village is awake. People are running out of their houses, not with weapons, but with kitchenware. We are talking sufurias, heavy metal lids, old tin cans, iron bars, anything that makes a loud clashing noise. It's absolute pandemonium. You'll see grandmothers who can barely walk suddenly standing on their porches, beating a metal spoon against a cooking pot like they're at a rock concert. But here is the most terrifying and specific rule you have to remember. Please, if you ever find yourself in Kisumu or Siaya at 2 a.m., listen to me. You can never, ever beat a rhythmic drum. I'm serious. If you start making a vibe or a catchy beat, then Nyawawa won't run away. Instead, they'll think you're throwing a party for them. They will stop their migration, gather around your house, and they will start to dance. Can you imagine? You're trying to save your soul and the dead are having a rave in your garden? No, thank you. The noise has to be ugly. It has to be chaotic and discordant, something so annoying and loud that the spirits want to flee back to the depths of the lake. I actually saw this wild thread on a Kenyan community forum recently where a guy was visiting his parents in Homa Bay. He said he was just chilling, scrolling on his phone, when the entire street erupted. He thought it was a riot or a robbery. He ran to the door, but his uncle literally shoved a metal lid into his hands and told him, "Stop asking questions and start hitting the gate." He said the air felt so thick and heavy, like he was standing underwater, and he could hear this high-pitched whistle moving right past his ear. The second they started clanging the metal, that heavy feeling lifted. Another viewer told me a story about her aunt in Rusinga Island who forgot the rule and started clapping in a rhythm. She said the wind literally circled her house for 3 hours, and the next morning, all the milk in the house had turned sour, and the dogs wouldn't stop shaking. It's this fascinating, scary blend of our modern world, where we have 5G and smartphones, and these ancient, powerful forces that still demand our respect. It's about community defense. You aren't just making noise for yourself, you're helping your neighbor drive the darkness away. It's the ultimate vibe check from the spirit world.
All right, let's take a collective breath. Because honestly, that lore is heavy. But we have to talk about why this story even exists in the first place. Why did our ancestors spend their nights hitting pots instead of just locking their doors? Historically, many elders link the rise of the Nyawawa to times of sudden invisible death, specifically the massive smallpox outbreaks and the flu epidemics that hit the lake region long ago. Before modern medicine, when a disease swept through a village without warning, people felt completely helpless. Kayoyo Nyawawa wasn't just superstition, it was a psychological survival mechanism. It turned a moment of pure silent terror into an act of community unity. It was a way for the village to say, "We see you. We aren't hiding, and we are fighting back together." Of course, as things change, with more of us moving to the city, the influence of religion, and the fact that we all have smartphones in our pockets, these traditions are starting to fade. You're honestly more likely to hear a car alarm or a loud motorbike than a Sephoria in most places now. But even if you don't believe in the spirits, there is something so beautiful about that legacy. It's a reminder of a time when the whole neighborhood looked out for one another. It's a piece of Luo identity that says, our people didn't just sit in the dark and wait for the end. They stood up, grabbed whatever they had, and made some noise. It's about resilience, and that's a vibe we should definitely keep alive, even if the spirits themselves have stayed back in the water. So guys, the next time you're visiting the lakeside and you hear that first faint metallic clang echoing through the trees at midnight, don't just stand there staring. Grab a spoon, grab a lid, because in the dark, you never really know if it's just the wind or if the water is finally coming to reclaim its own. I need to hear your stories. Has your family ever mentioned the Nyawawa? Spill the tea in the comments. I'm reading them all tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Storytime Chronicles. Stay safe and keep those Sephorias ready. Bye.
You all are absolutely amazing. I just read the funniest comment, and you know what? It really makes me think about home. So here's the plan for tonight. Let's talk about it.